Like, subscribe, and comment if you dare, because once you step into this case, there's no turning back. The rain was still dripping from the blue police lights when officers arrived at the house on Ashford Close. It was a quiet cul-de-sac in Surrey, the kind of place where nothing ever happened and everyone waved politely at their neighbors. But that night, the front door hung open, its lock twisted and split like bone. Inside, the home had been turned completely inside out. Drawers were ripped from dressers. Floorboards had been pried up. A safe, once bolted into the wall, was gone without a trace. The owners, a wealthy couple, were away on holiday. Whoever did this knew exactly when they'd be gone and exactly what they were looking for. By sunrise, the police already suspected this wasn't just another burglary. It was too clean, too precise. There were no smashed windows, no random, chaotic destruction. It was a surgical invasion that, according to a neighbor's doorbell camera, lasted less than 9 minutes. The footage caught nothing but fleeting shadows and a van with false license plates disappearing into the night. And this was only the beginning. Within 3 weeks, nearly a dozen high-value homes across southern England were hit in the exact same way. Surrey, Kent, Greater London. The targets were always in wealthy neighborhoods. The break-ins always happened during narrow windows when the owners were absent. And the criminals always left the same calling card. No fingerprints, no DNA, and no alarm triggers left intact. Jewelry, cash, rare watches, encrypted hard drives, all vanished. Behind closed doors, police began to whisper about the suspects. They called them a professional crew, possibly ex-military, maybe even insiders with specialized knowledge. The case was escalating, and they needed their best. That's when Detective Inspector Mark Ellison was assigned. Ellison was a veteran, hardened by 20 years of chasing organized crime syndicates across the country. He took over just as the fourth burglary turned into something much worse. In Hampstead, a homeowner returned early from a business trip and surprised the intruders. He wasn't physically harmed, but he was bound, blindfolded, and locked in his own wine cellar for hours. When he was finally found, shaking and dehydrated, he said something that made Ellison's blood run cold. "They knew my name," the man whispered. "They knew where everything was." This single detail changed everything. What unsettled Ellison wasn't the theft, it was the intelligence. Someone was feeding this gang highly specific information. Holiday schedules, floor plans, security system codes. This wasn't random. It was curated. The burglaries were being handpicked. As Ellison's new task force expanded, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Every single victim had recently interacted with a luxury service company, bespoke travel agencies, high-end renovation firms, or private security consultants. The list of potential sources was long, but it narrowed quickly. The leak had to be coming from inside one of these exclusive ecosystems. Someone was leaking client details, or, more likely, selling them. Then, they got their first break. A routine traffic stop. A patrol officer in Croydon pulled over a van for a faulty taillight. The driver was a man in his early 30s, with a calm, disarming smile and a story that just didn't add up. Inside the van, officers found tools that were far from ordinary. Lockpicks disguised as pens. Signal jammers hidden beneath the seats. The driver gave a false name and refused to cooperate. But his phone betrayed him. Even though it was a burner, it held encrypted messages and, most damningly, a photo taken accidentally from the passenger seat. It showed a whiteboard. On it were addresses, dates, and names. Some were already crossed out, marking completed jobs. The suspect refused to talk, but the board was enough to confirm Ellison's greatest fear. The gang wasn't finished. In fact, they were accelerating. And at the very top of their list, circled in red, was an address belonging to a retired tech executive, a man rumored to keep millions in untraceable assets off the books. The police operation moved into high gear. Surveillance went up immediately. Unmarked cars parked on every corner. Officers worked grueling night shifts. Armed response units were put on standby, ready to move in at a moment's notice. But the burglars were watching, too. On the third night of the stakeout, security cameras caught a figure across the road, pretending to jog. He was scanning the property with practiced, professional eyes. Minutes later, every single camera feed went dark. They weren't cut, they were jammed. Ellison's radio crackled with urgency. Units converged on the property, sirens blaring. But by the time they arrived, the perimeter had been tested and abandoned. There was no break-in. No suspects in sight. There was just a message. A challenge. Spray painted on the pavement, half washed away by the light rain, were 3 words that made the detective's heart stop. Too slow, Mark. Ellison stared at the letters, his own name burning back at him from the wet asphalt. This wasn't just a burglary ring anymore. This was personal. It was a direct challenge. Hours later, back at headquarters, the cybercrime unit finally managed to decrypt a fragment from the seized burner phone. It revealed a meeting location in an abandoned industrial park. It listed a time, and it contained a note that made the entire room fall silent. It read, "Drop site compromised. Initiate fallback. Burn the inside man." When tactical teams raided the abandoned warehouse listed in the message, they found exactly what they expected: crates of stolen goods, stacks of fake passports, and a pile of burner phones smashed to pieces. But in a locked office at the very back, behind a reinforced steel door, there was something no one could have ever predicted. Lying on a dusty desk was a uniform, a police uniform. It was folded neatly, with a badge number pinned to the chest. A badge number that belonged to someone already on Detective Inspector Ellison's task force. In that moment, everything changed. The enemy wasn't just outside the gates. They were already inside. Thank you so much for watching. This case is still unfolding, and there are so many unanswered questions. Who was the officer on the inside? And how deep did this conspiracy go? The room went silent. A collective breath held. The badge number was confirmed. It belonged to Detective Constable Aaron Pike, Ellison's own colleague, a man who had sat in briefings, shared coffee, laughed at gallows humor. Pike had been with the task force from day one. He knew every single address, every patrol pattern, every contingency plan. But Pike was already gone. His flat was empty, stripped down to bare walls, like he'd never even lived there. His phone had been wiped clean, leaving no digital ghost behind. His car? Found 2 days later at a motorway service station, keys still dangling in the ignition. CCTV showed him calmly stepping into another vehicle, driven by someone whose face never turned toward the camera. It was a clean disappearance, executed with the same chilling precision as the burglaries themselves. Ellison felt the weight of it crush down on him. This wasn't just a criminal network anymore. This was a betrayal. It cut straight through the heart of the investigation, poisoning everything they thought they knew. Every lead Pike had touched was now suspect. Every delay, every near miss, every time they'd shown up just a minute too late, it all suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. The leak wasn't just a possibility. He had been sitting right beside them. As the pressure mounted from every direction, the gang struck again. But this time, they made it personal. A house in Richmond was hit while the owners slept peacefully upstairs. No confrontation, no violence, just a note left on the kitchen counter, written in careful, cold block letters. "You're chasing the wrong ghost." The media exploded. Headlines screamed about a phantom burglary gang and police infiltration. The story was too good, too cinematic to ignore. Politicians, smelling blood in the water, demanded answers. The public, understandably, began to panic. Homeowners installed new, expensive alarms. Private security firms doubled their fees overnight. And still, the burglaries continued, faster and bolder than before, as if they were mocking the very idea of security. Behind the scenes, away from the noise and the flashing cameras, Ellison narrowed his focus. He knew Pike hadn't been the mastermind. Pike was smart, but he wasn't this smart. He was just the leak, the inside man. The real leader was someone else. Someone who had planned for contingencies like this, who had built layers upon layers of deniability. Someone with an unnerving amount of patience. Financial analysts were put to work, tracing the stolen assets through a dizzying maze of shell companies and crypto wallets. It was a global goose chase, but eventually, they found a single thread. It led to one offshore account that predated the first burglary by years. The name attached to it meant nothing, a ghost in the system. But the pattern did. This wasn't a street crew looking for a quick score. This was a long game, planned meticulously, years in the making. And then, a mistake. It's always a mistake that cracks these things open. One of the low-level, expendable gang members was picked up in Manchester. He got greedy, tried to sell a rare watch stolen months earlier. Under the intense pressure of interrogation, he talked. Not much, but it was enough. He described a man they called the broker. Someone who never attended the jobs, never touched the stolen goods, and never stayed in one place for long. All their meetings happened in transit, on trains, ferries, in airport lounges. Always moving, always one step ahead. The broker wasn't just a criminal. He was a logistical genius, a ghost who orchestrated everything from the shadows. With this new information, Ellison looked at the evidence board again. He realized the final job hadn't happened yet. The red-circled address from the whiteboard, the sprawling estate of a reclusive tech executive, wasn't just another target. It was the endgame. Inside that estate was a vault hidden behind state-of-the-art biometric locks. It contained assets so discreet they didn't officially exist on any ledger. This was the kind of score that let criminals disappear forever, living out their days in untraceable luxury. This was the broker's retirement plan. The police raced to set a trap. They moved with absolute secrecy, quietly replacing the existing security staff with their own undercover officers and installing covert surveillance throughout the property. Then they waited. For 48 agonizing hours, nothing happened. No signals, no shadows moving in the dark. The silence was deafening. Then, just before dawn on the third day, motion sensors triggered. Just for a moment. Too briefly. It was a flicker, a whisper in the system. Ellison arrived on the scene to find the house completely untouched. No signs of forced entry. No alarms tripped. Everything looked perfect. And yet, the vault, the impenetrable biometric vault, was wide open. Inside, everything was gone. But on the polished floor lay a single object. A burner phone, powered on, its screen lit up in the darkness. A message waited for him. 3 simple words. You finally caught up. Forensic teams traced the phone's signal. It was moving. A ferry, crossing the English Channel. By the time authorities could coordinate with port officials in France, it was too late. The passengers had already disembarked and melted away. CCTV footage showed a man in a simple gray coat blending into the crowd, his face perfectly obscured by the angle of the camera, just another anonymous traveler. Weeks passed. The investigation ground on. Arrests were made. The crew members, the foot soldiers, were dismantled one by one. Some of the stolen property was recovered from various hiding spots. Charges were filed. A press conference was held. The public was told the Phantom Gang had been neutralized. Officially, the case was closed. A victory for law and order. But Ellison couldn't forget the phone, or the message, or the chilling fact that the vast majority of the stolen wealth, the real prize, was never found. Somewhere out there, the broker had slipped away with everything that mattered, leaving them with the scraps. 3 months later, a file landed on Ellison's desk. A routine burglary report from Belgium. He almost dismissed it. But something made him look closer. The same precision, the same impeccable timing, the same complete absence of evidence. And left behind, on a kitchen counter, was a note written in familiar block letters. New market. Same rules. Ellison stared at the photo, a cold, hard understanding settling in his gut. They hadn't stopped the gang. They hadn't won. They'd only forced it to evolve, to move to a new playground. And as he read through the final page of the report, one last detail stood out, making the hair on his arms stand up. A name, listed as a private consultant on a brand new luxury security contract, recently approved in London. Aaron Pike. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because the most dangerous criminals are the ones who are never really caught. Thanks for watching.